Hello, everyone. My name is Samara Brochado, and today I am going to present the results of my research on the acquisition of English as a second language in the medical course. As we know, English is now the lingua franca of science and medicine. Virtually all high impact articles, congresses, and new guidelines come first in English. To organize today's presentation, I divided the work into five main parts. First, the introduction, followed by the research relevance. Then, we move on to the methodology of this research, the analysis of the results, and finally, the study conclusions. To introduce you to the research, the main objective of this work was to investigate and understand how medical students learn English, what is their relationship with the language, and how they view English teaching today. As an initial methodological fact, the interviews were conducted on Wednesday from 11:10 a.m. to 12:50 p.m. in person at CSS, o Centro de Ciências da Saúde, there at the Fundão campus. This study contributes by demonstrating that even in a highly competitive and intellectual elite course such as medicine, the traditional teaching of English in regular schools is unanimously considered insufficient. Speaking about the methodology, the interview was conducted in Portuguese since the participants themselves preferred to continue in that language. I used a structured questionnaire that I developed myself containing 11 questions covering socioeconomic factors, learning history, and personal perceptions about English. After the collection, data were tabulated and analyzed quali- qualita- qualitatively and quantitatively, seeking to map the patterns, concordances, and disagreements on fluency and methodologies. Here, in the social economic profile, our sample included 8 participants from medicine. The age varies from 20 to 25 years, very concentrated between 20 and 21 years. We have a female majority of 6 women and 2 men, since some male students of the medical course rejected being entrevistados. About race in the IPGE criterion, we have 5 whites, 2 pardos, and 1 black person. As we can see in the table, students are spread between the second and the fifth period, with 1 student in the eighth period. They live in different neighborhoods of Rio de Janeiro, such as Tijuca, Humaitá, Barra, Flamengo, Caxambi, Rocha Miranda, and Duque de Caxias in Rio de Janeiro, and Icaraí in Niterói. Looking now at the slide with the graphs, we have one of the most intriguing points of the research. On the left, we see that 100% of our participants had studied English before entering the medical school in UFRJ. This shows that the sample had early and universal access to the language. However, when we look at the chart on the right, the picture changes. 55% say that they do not consider themselves fluent in English. That is, most of these students, even after accumulating years of formal education in school or in free courses before university, still feel that they have not reached fluency. This leads us to conclude that the traditional teaching model, focused on memorization, fails to generate security and communicative autonomy, generating students who know the theory but do not feel ready for practice. Moving on to the next slide, we have the table that contains some of the qualitative answers obtained in the interview, where we can cross check the learning data with each student's individual perception. I would like to highlight three main points of this table. First, we note that the trajectories are very plural. While some students relied heavily on traditional in person courses, such as Cultura Inglesa and Hamlet, others built their foundation through daily consumption of series, music, games, or even studying fully autonomously, demonstrating that pop culture has a huge weight on informal learning. The answers range from external demands, such as my parents forced me, in Luana's case, or immediate goals like passing through exams in school, and predominantly early recognition that language will be crucial for the academic environment, labor market, and traveling. The second point that I would like to highlight in this table is the high bar for what the students consider to be fluent. Several participants point out that real fluency goes far beyond translating words. It involves being able to have a conversation with natives about any subject in an interesting way without needing to think about simultaneous translation. This explains the previous slide because since the requirements are so high for what is fluency, many of them hesitate to declare themselves fluent. Finally, the last column of this table gives us a very clear verdict on regular English teaching in Brazil. The criticism is general. Students report that the classes in school are focused on a theoretical, outdated teaching with large classes and no conversation practices, which makes the process unattractive and insufficient. Here are the results of this table that we've just seen talking about their motivations on learning English. Now, analyzing the most important similarities found as illustrated by the slide mean all participants reported that they liked the process of learning English, seeing the language as something functional and expanding their cultural repertoire. In addition, there was 100% consensus that school English is not enough, being criticized as lagging, neglect, and focus only on theory and grammar to pass through the exams in school or in courses. Therefore, all eight students suggested that the classes should be radically different, more dynamic, immersive, focused on everyday life, with a strong emphasis on conversation tools and current materials, using pop culture to bring the students' attention and to try to make the English classes uh, more mente aberta place for the students. Here we have the paradox of fluency, well illustrated by the meme. My English is good until I speak with a native. Students who consider themselves fluent, like Luana and Ana Carolina, define fluency as something complex, talking about any subject without needing to mentally translate and understand accent and regionalities. For others, it's just being able to communicate in another country or maybe just be ready to make your own pedido in a restaurant or maybe get some information and se virar em outro país no qual a língua ah, principal é o inglês. Because of this high rule, half of the interviewed students, 4 out of 8, does not feel confident with their English skills. Valentina's case is the most emblematic one. She studied English for 10 years. She knows that medicine requires English. She knows that it's important for her academic life, and she actually likes English and talking with other person in English, but she don't have confidence to speak spontaneously with natives. She don't think she is fluent because she thinks that her accent can maybe misunderstood her frase, né? Ela acha que o acento dela, né, o sotaque dela pode atrapalhar, né, no quesito comunicação. Então, ela acredita que ela não é fluente por falar com sotaque ou por até mesmo ter vergonha de falar com falantes nativos do inglês, porque ela se sente constrangida e ela se sente num lugar assim de vergonha mesmo, por talvez se sentir tímida em frente de pessoas, né, desconhecidas que falam inglês. To conclude this work, the data reinforce that the basic education system does not prepare these students for oral communication, pushing them into private courses or independent studies. There is a clear emotional gap, even with years of formal study. Confidence is lacking, showing that the teaching urgently needs to migrate from an old model focused on grammar memorization to one focused on social interaction and communicative security. Finally, we understand that English often acts as an oppressive language, especially within classrooms. So, it is our responsibility as future teachers and researchers of letters to adapt the classrooms, adapt the teaching of English to meet the real needs of students and help in the deconstruction of this oppression of language. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions about the research, you can leave them here in the comments.